we have increased our credits now by 20 grand, and the reason why that's the case is, well, because I did the easy Capri rally twice, and there is a reason why I did that. If I head somewhere over here, you will notice we're now up to 80 cars, and the other reason for that is, well, because I have two doppelganger models of this car right here, the Toyota RSC Rally Raid car, which sells for nearly 266 grand. And I figured for that reason, because, well, I have both of these here, I might as well sell them now. Because we need the money for our next event, and we also need it to buy our next car as well. So that now puts us up by a significant chunk, and if I can find the other one, I know I had it in here somewhere. Here it is. I think that's right. I guess it depends on when I got the most recent one. Anyway, acquired date, why not? It's probably on the other side. Yeah, here it is. And if I sell this, I think that should now move us up to well over 900 credits, I think. It does, as we're now up to 913,400 credits. And basically, I did the easy Capri rally by using both my Nissan Gran Turismo Skyline GTR, as you can see there, and also the Cadillac CN for my first attempt, both of which I have driven for 10.7 miles respectively, which is equivalent to about 21.4 miles of driving, as I've now increased to 869 miles. Nice. Okay, so that's enough of the tomfoolery for now. I have decided on which car it is I will be using for the next event. And I'm gonna head down to here. Ari Amimiya, I think is how it's pronounced. But yeah, and this is the car we are going to use. The Ari I can't speak. The Ari Amimiya Aspara-Drink RX-7 from 2004. And I figured I would pick this car because, well, it's a GT300 car, and also because, well, we can buy it. So that's what we're doing. Also the first time I've actually bought a race car in this game. But we will need it, because the next event we'll be doing will be a 10 race championship, and we're also going to need some extra power as well whilst we're at it. So for this, I think stage 3 will be fine for this, from what I know, just to put me more on level with the AI. And also got the racing super hards, but I think just in case, I'll get the racing hards as well, just in case. I probably don't need them, but they're there for me just in case. And I think that should be everything we need. Yeah, basically, the way you can actually re-win the cars you've already won is you can basically just clear the events you've already won, or races you've already won on that said event, and then you can basically re-win a car that you've already won before. That's basically how that whole thing works. So you can basically clear the wins that you got before you, it will not affect any of your stats, And basically, you will more or less be able to re-win the cars that you've already won, basically. So it's a 10 race championship, 15 grand depending on how many races we win, and 100,000 is the overall prize if we can win the championship overall. So the tracks we're going to are Tokyo, Suzuka East, Seoul Central, which is in South Korea. We've also got Fuji Speedway 90s, along with 12 laps on the Twin Ring Motegi Super Speedway, or as I prefer to call it, the Twin Ring Motegi Oval. Then we've got Laguna Seca, Hong Kong, the Motegi Road Course. We also have the 2005 layout of Fuji Speedway, and last but not least, a 5-lap finale at the full Suzuka circuit. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. And for this championship, we are battling basically 3 Nissan GTRs and 2 Toyota Supras. But what's more important is, we have the Castrol Toms Supra. And I refer of course to the original one from 2000. I don't think tyre wear is going to be too much of an issue here, so I think I'll switch over to the Racing Hards for this. I don't think we need the Super Slicks. I think the Stage 3 turbo we have should be enough. I more or less have everything I need with this thing, so let's get moving. As we begin the All Japan GT Championship, the last of our 6 championship events, in the last of our 6 events that we have to do in Japan. Hopefully this will be enough for us to realistically make a charge, as already the Wood One Tom's Supra is already being held up, and 1.7 seconds is the gap to the leading Supra at this point. And now I am trying to clear the Nismo GTR. I think I have just cleared him, and that's now my second pass of the race altogether. I'm pretty sure this is not going to be a clean sweep, but I am pretty sure in saying that I can win at least 7 of these races, and that's all. And that was stupid. I was pretty sure I did have the racing line as well, but apparently the GTR I was trying to pass basically said no, and just fucked me anyway. Well, if that's the way you want to play, so be it. But I will make sure to cleanly pass you. I will make sure to clear you, and I will clear you fair and square if I have to. That's what I vow to do. Especially since the top 3 is barely separated. And now it looks like one of the GTRs has now taken over the lead. I get into the back of the Castrol Tom's Supra for a moment there, whilst repassing the Pennzoil Zaxel GTR, I think was who I passed. And now I've made it up to the front. more or less. Or at least I'm trying to get to the front. Also, if you're asking me for my reason with getting that extra money, well, it was simply because I figured there was some extra money that needed to be grabbed for the upcoming European events. And I have a feeling that one or two of them will probably be, for want of a better phrase, money-spending affairs. Which is why I bought this car, as well as sold 2 Toyota RSCs, just so I could at least have some money for the upcoming European event that will probably be starting as soon as we're done here. I also picked this car because, well, I haven't driven a Mazda RX-7 yet, and I figured, well, since I don't really have enough money to get myself a GT500 car just yet, for what's basically the Japan Grand Touring Car Championship, or JGTC for short, JGTC for short, the series itself ran from 1993 to 2004, and during that time it gave us some pretty iconic cars as well, as it gave us the Nissan Skyline GTR, the Toyota Supra, and most recently in that series, well, the Honda NSX. And all of this happened basically before, well, those 3 cars, along with basically a whole host of other racing-made touring cars that came along the way. And so far so good. And it looks as though the Supra might be closing in on me, but I should have a big enough gap to maintain my lead, so I think we should be fine at this point. There is quite a battle going on for second at the moment, but I would say we have everything we need. So yeah, so there was basically a whole host of different cars that competed in the JGTC at the time. I think there were even a few Ferraris that competed in a couple of races as well, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, basically it was more or less a global touring car series because of how many manufacturers were involved. But either way, it's fair to say that the series itself eventually disbanded and became rebranded as the Super GT series by 2005, and that's ultimately the name it's run with ever since. Been a pretty close opener to the All Japan GT Championship, but I think this will be a win for the Ari, Amemiya RX-7, and I almost thought for sure that was the finish. That was why I let go. That was a total mistake on my part. But it still keeps me out in the lead, and we've definitely had some parity among the pack, as it is now the Nismo Zanavi GTR that is up into third, of course, well, leaderboards don't exactly exist in this game. Something else that wouldn't officially become a feature until GT5 in the mainstream series. But it's fair to say that we've had a pretty close and encouraging battle here, as I hit the outside wall but still able to maintain my position, and that's a wall. And it's fair to say that this has been a very close battle. Basically, we're more or less pack racing. Except for saying we're not having to deal with restrictor plates while we do it. But I think I should have enough pace to hold off the pack behind me. He's coming strong, but I'm not letting him go past me. It's going to be close, but I think I'll hold on. I only just hold on. By less than 2/10. Then it was the Zanavi Hiroto GTR that finished third. Then we had the Supra in fourth, followed by the Pennzoil GTR in fifth, and at the back it was the Wood One, Tom's Supra, in last. So, pretty compelling first race if I do say so myself. But either way, there we go. So that was race 1, and definitely a compelling race to say the least. Okay, on to race 2. And we are now at Suzuka Circuit for 12 laps of the East Coast. Ordinarily, I would consider switching to the Super Slicks, but because we are on the East course, I think we should be okay. Plus, I did manage to win the first race with relative ease, even though it was definitely a close-fought battle among our contenders, but since we're on a course that's less about speed and more about cornering this time, I think this one should be a bit less trouble to get through. Or a bit less chaotic in terms of parity, which is what happened before. I was pretty sure that Hiroto GTR tried to spin me out twice, but I held my ground on both attempts. And that's a good thing for me because, well, it means I can battle among my opponents. So one lap is down here at Suzuka East. First time in a while I've had to race here on the Suzuka East circuit in a championship, if I'm not mistaken. Although I could be wrong. Probably is the first time I've actually raced on the East course in a championship. But again, because this course is more reliant on cornering speed, I think we should be okay. I do know, of course, that this race is 12 laps long, so it'll probably take me about less than 12 minutes to finish this, if we're being realistic. Maybe 11 minutes. But either way, I think we're doing okay for now. Because I'm slowly edging away from the opponents behind me. I'll probably do the whole thing, because I think altogether this will probably take me about less than 2 hours to get through. Plus, it's not like I'm really short on time at this stage, so I think we should be okay for this. I might as well do the whole thing, so then I don't have to separate any video files later on, or record this in any separate files, I should say. So, 4 laps down, and I already have a 4.6 second gap over the Castrol Tom's Supra, who is in second place and seemingly holding on to second place, as I am really struggling to get my words out. So we're almost at the halfway point, just got 1 lap to go before we reach the halfway point, and it looks like that's what's going to happen. So, looks like the Castrol Supra is now closing in on me again, but it was kind of expected at some point. But either way, because we have a lot more corners here at Suzuka compared to Tokyo, and of course, well, the front stretch is a bit less in length on the East course, that is. I think we should be fine, and that's pretty much what I'm proving here at this time. So setting a new best lap time of a 50.4. Looks like we probably will get this finished in about 10 minutes or so, if we're able to keep the car clean long enough. And I've now driven 25 miles in this thing. I might also have to consider getting my calculator out to figure out just how many miles I drove altogether in the Japanese events, because I probably drove at least 400 miles by now, from what I can see. So 3.7 seconds up front. It looks as though we are very much in position to scoring 2 wins on the trot. I also quite like how we're actually burning up fuel as well, basically to show just how many laps we've done up to this point. I think that's actually a nice little feature, personally. I'd say I'm okay with that. And continuing to set the pace, as we are now 8 laps in to race 2. I think the gaps have now pretty much split themselves up, compared of course to the absolute chaos that we had in Tokyo to open this up, where the pack itself was barely separated from one another, I might add. But this time, we seem to be doing pretty well, as the gaps have no doubt spoken for themselves. So, we are now 3/4 of the way there, and we just have 3 to go. I'm more or less maintaining my gap now over the rest of the field. Looks as though everyone is pretty much split up at this point. And it looks as though this is going to be 2 out of 2 to the GT300 RX-7. Because in the Super GT they technically have 2 classes. There's the GT300 class and the GT500 class. And yes, as you might have guessed, well, both of those classes technically relate to how much horsepower there is in the vehicle, or thereabouts. Because normally, this is a GT300 car, so typically this would be worth about 300 horsepower, or as it said on the settings screen, or the dealership screen when I saw it, the horsepower it had was 295, which is more or less equivalent to about 300 horsepower for its category, if you know what I'm talking about. So, 1 lap to go here at Suzuka Circuit East. And where it looks as though I'm steadily pulling away from the Toyota Castrol Tom's Soup at this point. Because, well, the Toyota Supra basically is the soup. And I'm pretty certain that as long as I stay on track, this might be a new personal best lap time. But we'll wait and see. So coming off the final corner, and yep, new best lap time in the process. I think I probably broke the lap record for this at least, what, maybe 6 or 7 times altogether, and everyone finishes again, as I finish by 6.7 seconds clear of the Castrol Supra, and this time the Nismo GTR that almost beat me in Tokyo finishes in 5th, and that now, I think, drops him down to either 3rd or 4th. Yeah, he drops down to 4th, because he finished 5th. So those are your standings after 2 races. 2 out of 2 wins to me. This will probably not continue, but either way, it's nice to get a streak going early. So let's now move on to race 3. So we are 2 races down, and next up we have Seoul Central, and where this one is going to be a rolling start. Don't really think qualifying is necessary, and because, well, Seoul Central is a pretty easy racetrack to get your head around, I probably don't need to switch over to the Super Slicks. I of course switched over to the Racing Slicks because, well, I figured it would make things easier that way. So, as I would have expected, a little slow off the line, but again, the AI typically tend to be faster than me on the straights, whereas I often tend to be faster in the corners. But either way, I did of course fit a Stage 3 turbo so I could compete with the AI, and it's fair to say that I have now bagged at least 250 A-Spec points altogether. And because I am driving a proper race car this time, I am having nowhere near as many problems regarding contact with the opponents in front of me. as I'm now clearing the Skyline Hiroto GTR for P2. And it looks as though we are very much on our way to scoring what could be our third win in 3 races, if I'm able to catch up to the Supra. So 2.6 seconds is virtually the gap to the Castrol Tom's Soup at this point, and I am continuing to close that gap with my superior cornering speed. So this one looks as though it could be a thriller. So heading back up to the roundabout with the Palace in the centre, and I am now steadily closing in on the leading Supra, as the gap is now less than a second, and it looks as though at this point like we are very much in the swing of potentially putting together an overtaking move. And just as we get onto the straight, that's precisely what happens. I'm pretty much well clear of the Castrol Soup by now, and it looks as though this is probably going to be another easy win for me, or thereabouts. As the gap is now 2 seconds up front. So, as I would have expected, a pretty easy stint to get to the front, as I have proven. And now I have increased the gap to 3 seconds. Looks as though this is going to be another one of those races that I probably win easily. So, yeah. I also figured I would choose this card because, well, why not? So we are halfway there with Seoul Central, and it looks as though it's going to be another easy dub for me here on the streets of South Korea. So 5 seconds is now the gap to the Soup at this point, and it looks very much like we are on our way to achieving what will be another hat-trick of wins, just like we did before with the NSX. And it looks as though this one is going to be finished within 10 minutes or thereabouts. as the domination of my Ari Amimiya RX-7 is very much continuing. Although I was at risk of losing the first race, because, well, to put it simply, that first race, it was chaos, especially at the finish. But either way, I did manage to get it pulled off. And that was pretty much how I won. It was in a close fought battle, but I did manage to get it pulled off. As we're now 7 laps in to as we are now 7 laps in to what is looking very much like another dominant display from me. The first race definitely provided me with a memorable moment or two. But the races I've had since, well, they've been pretty easy for me to pull off, in all honesty. And I now set a new best lap time. So 2 laps to go here at Seoul Central. It's looking very much like this is going to be another easy win, because we are more or less running what feels like endurance events at this stage. Even though our precursor to the endurance events will be coming pretty soon. So, 1 more lap to go here on the streets of South Korea. And then, once we are done here, we can then move on to the rest of the championship. It's been pretty easy for me to win 2 out of my 3 races, which I have now done. And the gap is now 7 seconds. So I'm slowly but surely chipping away from the Toyota behind me. I'm also surprised to say that we're not going up against any Hondas here, because it would have made sense for me to go up against a Honda whilst I was at it, but apparently that's not the case. Anyways, I win. That took me 9 minutes and 46 seconds to finish, with a 7.668 margin of victory. I might actually consider switching back to the Super Slicks for the next race, because I think it's fair to say the additional grip I seem to be having at the moment, it's giving me a little bit too much of an advantage, so I might consider switching back to the Super Slicks for the next one, just to make it more interesting. Even though these races have been pretty interesting so far. But either way, that was race 3, and I'm wondering if I should save the replay or not. You know what, yeah, I will save the replay here. Because I haven't saved a replay at Seoul Central for a while. I figure it's worth it. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're asking why the recent replays I've saved are actually back in line again, well, that's because I made sure to reset the date on my PS2, since that technically defaulted back to its original date. So I basically reset the date, and I also reset the time as well on my system settings, just to make sure everything was, you know, in place. And now we return to Fuji Speedway for Race 6. You know what? I'm gonna go back to the Super Slicks for this one, because I'm convinced in saying the reason why I won those last two races the way I did is, well, because I might have had a little bit too much of a performance advantage. But I think I've now established it's probably not needed here. And as a result of me switching tyres, that now increases my points up to 148. As of which I have scored a total of precisely 378 points in the first... well, as I've scored a total of 378 points, A-Spec points-wise, in the first 3 races. And this, I think, will now increase my total up to, let me think. My total up to, I think, 524 A-Spec points, which I have now gathered from this championship up to this point. So, I think it's fair to say this will be more of a challenge, and that's kind of what I want from this. I also chose this car because, well, it was the only GT300 Mazda RX-7 I could use for this. But either way, I'm getting the slipstream from the Supra, and just like that, I now take the lead. And close to hitting top speed, as I almost hit 180 down the front stretch, now heading through the right-hander. I think I had a little bit of oversteer there on that corner exit, but I was able to get everything correctly positioned, as I now lead this race by less than half a second, which I think is going to increase as we go further and further along. But I just figured I'd put on the Super Slicks to at least, you know, try and make this look more interesting. And at this point, that doesn't appear to be the case. But you know what? I think that's okay. Because, well, at this point, the more races I win, the less races I have to clean up afterwards. Especially since that is one thing that I didn't really have any trouble with last time. And I now have a 3-second gap up front. looks as though we are very much on our way to putting together what will probably be our 4th consecutive win, as I now have a 4-second gap up front. And unless I go for a spin at this point, it's highly likely to say that this win will be taken by me pretty easily. Yeah, 4 seconds. That pretty much explains everything you need to know about just how easy it's been for me to take the lead in these races up to this point. And the first half of this championship, I'm actually relieved about that, because I would imagine the second half is probably going to be more of a challenge. Even though I did have quite a compelling battle with the AC Cobra back at the World Classic Car Series, where I won the opener at Fuji, but then the Cobra fought back with 2 wins at both El Capitan and Nürburgring, and then I basically wound up winning again at both, well, Monaco and Laguna Seca. And as a result, well, I suppose if we're using football scores, the score was technically 3 wins to 2. And it is fair to say that for a 5-race championship, I can definitely say, out of thrilling battles I've had so far in this game, that's definitely what I would say is the top one, personally. If you're talking in terms of championships. Because, well, basically, I did have to come from behind by winning the last 2 races, and that's ultimately what I did. And that's now 4 laps down. A little bit early there on the brakes, as I braked at 176, but still a decent braking speed, and it looks as though, with super slicks or not, I'm very much pulling away with this one. And this time it's now the Zanovi Nismo GTR that breaks his way back up into the 2nd spot. First time he has managed to do that since Tokyo. I'm going to assume it must be a top speed advantage as to why he's back up here. I'd assume that's the reason. It's probably just some sort of, oh, I don't know, speed advantage. I'm just guessing that's what the case is, but, well, either way, probably doesn't matter because, well, I have a 6-second gap up front, and the odds of me losing this race right now, well, they're almost impossible. Unless I go for a spin. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm very much here to put together what will most likely be another easy win for me and my GT300 RX-7. 7 seconds now. The corners are definitely helping me. Plus, the AI don't really have much of an advantage here. at Fuji. This is very much a course that benefits the player above anyone else. And I think it's fair to say that the tactics I've used so far, they have worked out pretty well for me. So, off the final corner we go. 6.8 seconds is the gap. I'm pretty sure we're not going to lose this. And there we go, that's now 4 wins out of 4. As I have now scored a total of 524 A-Spec points up to this stage, and 40 points regarding the championship. And also the Wood one, Tom's Supra for once, did not finish last. He actually came home 5th. Well, good for him I guess, because he's not going to finish last in every race. So, the Castrol Supra still remains in 1st at the top, and we now have a tie for 3rd between 2 of the GTRs. But either way, 2nd is still held on to by the Castrol Supra. So 4 races down, and we still have another 6 to go. And now we move on to the Oval of Motegi. This is probably going to be either where my win streak continues, or it's going to be where it ends. But either way, we are now racing at the Darlington-shaped oval. A track itself that, from what I know, is relatively easy to tame. This is probably going to be my crucifix. But right now, I'd say we're doing okay. Speed is very much the name of the game here. And not quite able to get to the inside, but I think we should be okay here once I really get the tyres warmed up. Even though I am having to do a lot of lifting at the moment because the tyres are not gripped to the track surface yet. 3.7 seconds. Yeah, this might be where my win streak ends, potentially. Because my car is not gripping to the track very well. The tyres have not synced in yet. Yeah, this is probably going to be where my win streak ends. Is what me thinks. As much as I'm really trying to get some heat into the tyres. I'm really struggling to get some heat into the tyres right now. Well, looks like my win streak is going to end at 4. But I will come back and probably win this using another car, depending on how far off my car is compared to the rest of the field. But I am trying to get some pace into the tyres, as well as some wear. I think that's starting now, so I would assume we're closing the gap. But I don't know if it's going to be enough for me to actually get to the front. Because I'm very much battling from the back here. And if there's one thing that I lack at this stage, it's acceleration. So you can probably understand why up to this point this has been a bit of a struggle. But I think it's fair to say that since I'm now getting some heat into the tyres, I'm just letting this race patiently come to me, and basically just letting the AI duke it out for themselves, whilst I am basically just waiting in the wings to try and stay under control with my car, and for me to eventually get to the front and start striking punches of my own, if that's possible. And it's becoming increasingly more possible because I'm now in the draft. Gap is now 1.1 seconds to the leader. We are very much super speedway racing here, as the pack is so close to one another. I am very much in the draft, as I gained precisely 8/10 on that lap, and probably went a little deep there on that corner entry, but still able to at least stay in control of my car. And as a result of those two GTRs hitting each other, that now moves me up into third position, and I get double passed, or should I say triple passed, by the Skylines. This is turning out to be quite a battle here, to say the least. This race has definitely been a thriller for pretty much its entirety. And then with the super slicks, then comes me, trying to strike onto the scene and go for some sort of daring pass on the leaders. As this video is nearly at the 1 hour mark, and it will probably pass it by the time we're done here. So this is either going to be where my win streak continues, or it's going to be where it ends. Because we are so close together right now, you can practically just throw a blanket over us. Because of just how close together we are. We're practically inseparable at this stage. Because of just how much we are battling to just stay with each other. That's why I'm strongly convinced in saying this is where the win streak will end. But I'm definitely trying my damnedest to make sure that I stay in this fight. And so, with less than 3 laps to go now, we're definitely running circuits around one another at the moment, because we're very much just doing whatever the fuck we can to just stay with one another. We are doing proper speedway racing here, and where we're basically just going foot to the floor for its entirety, and running out wide, but I am able to get the afterburners on for the backstretch. I don't think I'm gonna get this one, but by God, I am fucking trying to make sure I stay in this one. But I think the Turismo GTR might have just got us here. Unless the Wood 1 Supra can do something about him. Maybe spoil his run. Because I don't see myself winning this. But my God, I am certainly going to try and go for this one. I just don't have the pace to keep up with them. Oh well, P3 it is then. But you know what? I'm okay with that. The win streak had to end eventually. I just simply didn't have the pace to keep up with the two leaders. It just wasn't gonna happen here. I really went basically about as hard as I possibly could around the oval to see if I could mount a challenge, but unfortunately that didn't turn out to be the case. But it's fine. We're still double the points of everyone else, and that's probably going to increase by the time we get to our next meeting. But still, that was one wild race. Also the first time in this game I've actually finished P3, if you can believe it. I probably should have switched back to the slicks for this one, but oh well, it's fine. As we are now at Laguna Seca for race 6. Also nice to see the Wood 1 Supra getting a win. I think if there's anyone who I would have lost to gracefully, then it probably would have been the Wood 1 Supra right in front of me. Because I honestly felt like he probably deserved that win. He practically tried so hard for the entirety to just stay in the race, and then at the right time when he got close enough, he basically just turned on the afterburners, and then, well, he was more or less gone, along with the fucking Xanavi Nismo GTR that he was battling to quite simply get the win. I can definitely say that was a hard-fought win, whichever way you look at it. But at least we're back to the proper racing again. And I can always go back and probably turn my bronze into a gold using probably my Fair Lady Z concept. Because I'm convinced in saying the Mazda probably doesn't have enough pace to realistically mount a charge. But you know what? I think that's okay because, well, for want of a better phrase, I think I'm just gonna let this car do the heavy lifting and then basically leave the third race over to my Nissan Fair Lady Z race car in my garage. That's probably what I'll switch over to, just to, you know, make it so I give the Fair Lady Z something to do. Kind of what I did with both my GT licensed Skyline GTR and, ironically, my Cadillac CN for the money grinding purposes. But either way, yeah, that's probably what I'll end up doing. And looks as though the tyres are taking a little longer than usual to fully get up to temperature, but I think they're slowly coming around. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I am closing in on the soup that is leading. We are 2 laps in to Laguna Seca. And trying to see if I can pass him. And at this time, I have not been able to do so. But I am certainly trying. I think I know where the rev limiter is. And now it looks as though my tyres are slowly coming around. And it looks as though the Supra has run wide. I think that was coming out of Rainy Curve where he ran wide, but either way, that does give me a shot. And it's put me in position to fight for the lead. Although I will give the Supra credit for holding me off up to this point. We still have enough time to get the manoeuvre done. I don't quite have the space to go for the manoeuvre. I'm also not going to pull off a dive bomb at this point because, well, that would be stupid. I have to think about how I'm going to plan this. I always figured the AI's superior speed at some point was going to best me in this championship. But then again, I more or less just learned to treat it like I treat every other race. And make sure to treat it with discipline. Because that's the way I prefer to treat it. A little bit of a bounce there through Corkscrew, but now we get through Rainy Curve, and the Supra at the moment is doing a pretty good job of defending me. He's definitely wanting this battle to go on for longer than it would. And I give him a push there, not really much else I could have done in that situation, but I think it's fair to say this is where the battles are beginning to show themselves. I've scored a total of 500 and... wait, what did I score again? I don't remember. However many fucking A-spec points it was. If anyone wants to do the math down in the comments for how many A-spec points I scored altogether, then, well, you can do so. But whilst I'm recording this, I just can't really be bothered to get my calculator out whilst I'm engaged in a battle with the soup at this stage. We've pretty much been battling all day up to this point, pretty much all race long. I've been trying to look for a way through, but then he's always able to, ironically, fight back. So that definitely tells me the soup is definitely giving me quite a battle. Or at least he did up until about the end of lap 5, unless he manages to come back again. And I give him another bump. Probably wasn't anything else I could have done there while getting back on the throttle. But this has been quite a thriller of a race. And definitely what I would call probably the closest race I have had up to this point. Battling the soup up to this point for the win. He's been doing a really good job of holding me back. And he's definitely been fighting me for this entire race. He's not letting me pass him easily. He's definitely battling me, I can tell. I've been engaged in a long, hard battle up to this point of the race, and yet he's always managing to find a way through me. So, through the corkscrew again for the penultimate time. It's definitely very sudden with the undulation drop you get when you cross through there. He's now run wide. That gives me a shot to take over the lead. And before the start of the final lap, I do briefly take over the lead. He now runs into the back of me, and I think that now gives me the race lead by default. Unless he manages to charge back. No, I'll see where he's at. I'll keep my eyes on him. See what he's gonna do. Still, I really had to wait until the end of lap 6 to realistically make a charge. And this battle is not over yet. He's really keeping up with me. And he's definitely keeping tabs on me at this point. So it looks like my best shot to pass him is probably going to be either at the corkscrew, or it's going to be just after the corkscrew. We head up Rahal Straight. He tries to block me as we head into the corkscrew. I have the inside line, he has the outside. And heading through Rainy Curve, as I got on the brakes earlier, I had the inside entry. I almost lose control of the car there through Rainy Curve, but able to keep everything right where it should be. And now just one corner to go, I go deep to the inside. And that is the end of what has been an absolute banger of a race. On this remarkable course in California. That was an absolute thriller of a race. There's no question about it. I think out of all the races I've done up to this point, this one to me definitely felt like my best. Because I just absolutely sent it for pretty much that entire duration, and it took me up until the last lap, right at the corkscrew no less, where this race itself was decided, right in its dying stages. I actually pulled it off. That was amazing. An absolute thriller of a race here at Laguna Seca. But either way, the championship doesn't matter because, well, I still have a 29-point lead at the top. I never saw myself winning at the Motegi Oval. But I'm convinced in saying this will at least be 8 out of 10, because we're now in Hong Kong. And this one is going to be tricky, but we'll see how we go. So 9 laps around Hong Kong, and it looks as though this might be yet another second place for me. But it's okay because, well, I have a pretty unassailable lead at this point. So I think we should be okay. I honestly had to battle with the Supra all day long in order to actually score the win the way I did. It just felt so satisfying when I did manage to pull it off. I think out of the 5 wins I've already had up to this point, that one definitely felt like the most satisfying. Because it was basically a fight to the finish. And we were basically just staying glued to each other for that entire duration. It was honestly just amazing to be a part of. And I'm definitely glad to say it was me who managed to win that absolute thriller of a race. Still, I'll definitely give kudos to the Castrol Tom's Supra for not letting me pass him right until I eventually did pass him, just before and during the last lap of the race. It was honestly about as amazing as it gets. And I had to properly fight for it. Just to get everything in check. And that was what just made the win even more satisfying. I honestly don't care where I finish here because, well, I kind of knew this was going to be another one where the AI would have the advantage. But that doesn't mean to say I'm out of it. Well, looks like we're going to have some parity among winners in this championship. And I hit the back of the second Supra. Ironically, the Supra that won at the Motegi Oval. I really had to go for that dive bomb. Plus, I think it's fair to say it was fair, because, well, I was technically still on track when I pulled off. Never mind. I'm really struggling here. That's probably because I'm struggling to actually get some temperature into the tyres. Well, maybe that's the reason why the AI have the advantage in terms of race cars here at Hong Kong. Because I'm really struggling to get heat into the tyres at the moment. Looks like I could very well finish in the bottom half of this race if I don't manage to start making moves. I'm really going to have to start amping up the aggression here. That was not intentional, but I kind of had to clear him, so okay, I admit it was a little bit dirty, but the truth is, I was being held up. Plus, I did try and pass him once before, but was not successful. It was inevitable to say that sooner or later, with one of us not giving, that one of us was eventually going to pay the price. Well, if I can clear the GTR, then it looks like it's going to be at least P3 by the time we get to the end of this one. I think it's fair to say the AI's superiority here at Hong Kong is definitely seeming to keep me in check. But either way, I think we should be okay because, well, I did have a pretty sizable lead heading into this race anyway, so really doesn't make that much of a difference to me. And it looks as though the AI are getting aggressive here, so I'm going to have to start getting aggressive too, if I'm going to get some maneuvers done. I'll admit, a little bit over the top, but then again, the AI are getting aggressive with me, so I more or less have to do the same thing. At least in terms of battling for a podium here, because that's what my real target is. A podium for me will be fine. I will definitely be switching over to the slicks again after this, and not the super slicks, because I think it's fair to say my pace has now dropped off, as I would have expected. I think it's fair to say when I had those grippier hard tyres, it was definitely easier for me to get through the corners the way I did. Plus the AI are pretty much putting me on strings right now, which is what I'm doing my best to try and avoid. And that's why I have to amp up the aggression, or at least try to. Yeah, I kind of had to punt him out the way there. because again, I was being held up, and also because, well, the AI would have probably done the same thing to me, so... Yeah, this is probably the only race where I really have to see myself just getting so aggressive because they're holding me up. I was honestly just being held up for long enough to the point of where although it was dirty, I do admit, but at the same time I would have pretty much been swept under the rug in terms of my on-track form had I not pulled it off. Plus the AI were getting aggressive with me, so I had to do something to respond, or else I would have just been left in the dust even more than what I have done now. Hell, even fighting for a podium I probably would have been in the same situation. But either way, I am managing to at least make my shots count where I need them to count. Plus, this is definitely turning into a ding-dong battle for third. We're very much battling each other for a spot on the podium here. I think the race win at this stage is pretty much out of the question, so I'll probably have to sweep up 2 races by the time we get to the end of this, but it's okay because, well, I've seen the AI can be just about... I've seen just how inconsistent the AI tend to be in terms of their battles. Plus, I think either way, the Supra would have probably beaten me anyway. It's basically just a battle for the podium at this point. I mean, win streaks are never built to last. But I still have a pretty big lead up front because, well, I did win the first 4 races. And I did win those first 4 races in pretty dominant fashion. But it's fair to say the Japanese events have given me plenty of challenges at this point. And although I am closing in on the leaders, I don't think there's enough time for me to realistically charge for the lead. I'd say the best thing for me to do at this point is to pretty much do what I can to just defend with my life for a podium. Because I know in this event it's not going to be possible for me to find 5 seconds with 2 laps to go, or less than 2 laps to go. It's just not happening, Chief. I'm pretty sure the 2 up front have no doubt got enough of a gap for them to realistically waltz away with this. They've very much swayed away from me in terms of being at risk of losing their positions. Plus the thing is, when it comes to scoring in the triple digits, well, oftentimes the streaks don't really tend to last. And I think because, well, I've been scoring in the triple digit numbers a lot in terms of my ace-back points. That's partly the reason why these have not been lasting. Because I gotta say, oftentimes, winning these races can be quite hard. Especially if it comes to the high-scoring ones. It's even harder to consistently maintain those high-scoring streaks you may or may not have put together. Plus, I've been recording this now for nearly 1.5 hours. Or for nearly 90 minutes now, so I think out of all the championships I've done so far, this one, up to this point at least, has definitely been the longest. And I am going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I do the full championships. Okay, P3 at Hong Kong. Kind of figured that was going to happen, but either way, I pushed about as hard as I physically could. And it is fair to say that, as a result, it probably did tire me out. But then again, my streak wasn't going to last. It had to end at some point. But either way, I'm still having fun, and I'm still making sure that I am staying consistent at the top. And now we have a tie for third. So 58 points to me, 35 points to the Castrol Supra, and 28 points between both the Hiroto and Nismo GTR. Seven races down, and we still have another 3 races to go. So, let's move on to race 8. As we are now back at Twin Ring Motegi, this time on the road course. And what I am going to do now is switch back to my racing slicks. Because I'm convinced in saying they will give me more grip, plus tyre wear is not going to be an issue here, so let's see if we can get back to our winning ways. As the points we will get have now gone back down to 126 points. So basically what that means is we should very much be on course to hopefully getting our win streak back on course. But then again, the AI for 2 of the last 3 races, or basically for all of the last 3 races, they've definitely been swinging it at me. And swinging me hard. As in, they've definitely been swinging their punches at this point. But since I'm back on the grippier rubber again, hopefully we should have an easier time of getting through these last 3 races of the championship. I was convinced in saying we were going to have a difficult streak at some point. But since I am back on the grippier rubber, this should hopefully make my job easier in terms of being able to catch back up to the front of the pack as I collide with the Nismo GTR while trying to pass him. These are very much going to be sub 2 minute times from what I can see. And now I'm closing in on the Pennzoil Zaxel GTR and trying to pass him from the inside. He throws the block. He's not going to keep me there for long, as I have now cleared him. And now it looks as though this is going to be where I either will or won't have another thrilling battle with the Supra up front, who, as a result of his win in Hong Kong, has now more or less managed to cinch second place in the point standings. He sits on 35, I sit on 58. I have finished third in 2 of the last 3 races. But I am, of course, prepared to fight. And that's ironically what my goal is here, as I make sure that I am involved and considered relevant in this battle. So 4 tenths behind the Soup, and so far it looks as though our ding-dong battle is probably going to continue, as I have now driven a total of 128 miles in this thing. I'd imagine we're probably going to be setting sub 2 minute times at Suzuka as well, is what me thinks. Since I have grippier rubber this time, it's a little bit easier for me to keep up with him. Except for saying that this time, of course, we are on a faster racing course than what we were at Laguna Seca. He's definitely keeping me behind him again. And just backing out to make sure that I am able to make some corrections. It looks more and more like we're going to have another one of those ding-dong battles. Although in saying that, I have now taken over the lead. Briefly. But either way, I am of course keen to fight back. And that's basically what I'm doing here. I've been biding my time pretty much all race long to try and pull off a passing manoeuvre. I have come close a few times. And it's looking as though this is going to be another one of those close-fought battles, for which I did manage to win the last one at Laguna Seca. And I'm hopeful in saying that this time around, I am hopeful in saying that I can put together a similar one. But he's not letting me get away. So it's fair to say this is going to be another one of those ding-dong battles, which I have mentioned a few times. He is certainly not letting me walk away with this one. And as I would have guessed, the AI have definitely amped up their aggression in the second half of this championship. But either way, if I can do what I think I'm going to do, then I should be able to come away with 8 wins out of 10, or at least 7 wins out of 10 if this one proves to be another loss. But either way, I think aside from that close-fought thriller of a championship I had with the AC Cobra, this I can definitely say goes down racing-wise. Aside from the Tuning Car Grand Prix, racing-wise, this has definitely proven to be the most competitive championship I have fought in so far. And now, I am back up in the lead once again. And I have a feeling he's probably going to repass me again at some point. But either way, I am 7/10 up on the Castrol Tom's Supra. And it looks like I might have just broken away from him now, so I think it's fair to say that's where our battle has ended, as I am now 1.4 seconds clear of him, so you know what? It was still a pretty good battle altogether, and we did still manage to very much keep it going up until I passed him right before the last lap, so it was a good battle altogether. And in all honesty, I had fun with it. However, I don't think I'm going to get through these. However, I don't think there's really enough time for me to get through the cleanup as soon as I'm done with these last 2 races, because, well, I'm convinced in saying the time I have might not be enough, because, well, out of all the championships I've done so far, this has definitely been the longest. First time I've actually done a 10 race championship in this game. And I almost beat my previous best lap time. But in the end, I broke away and I won by 3.5 seconds. Over the fucking Castrol Tom's Supra. Anyway, there we go. So another 10 points to me and 6 to the Castrol Tom's Supra. And it's fair to say that we've had plenty of parity among the point scoring positions up to this stage. But either way, we still have 2 races to go. And then once I am done with those, I don't think I'll have enough time to get through the cleanup as soon as I'm done. Especially since I do have to be somewhere, and my TV is once again showing its notification as I accidentally hit my mug while grabbing the remote. But either way, there we go. 8 races down and still 2 to go. I've very much cinched the champion. I have very much cinched my championship at this point. As we have 2 races to go. One at Fuji and the other one at Suzuka. And before we continue, I need a sip of water. And so, we begin our penultimate meeting of the All Japan GT Championship. And then, as soon as we are done here, 1 race remains. And there is a lot of contact as we got through the first right-hander. Had no idea what was happening in front of me, but looked as though there was some sort of jockeying going on, but I do manage to clear at least part 1 of the jockeying. And getting a little bit loose there, but able to course correct. And I just hit the skyline. But you know what? I think we're doing okay at this stage. And now, I am closing in on the leading Supra once again. And because we are back at Fuji once again, this is probably going to be another ding-dong battle. From what I can see. I think this championship might take me possibly 2 hours to complete, or just under 2 hours by the time we're done here. And I can certainly say I will not be doing anything else in this game, because there won't be, well, I certainly won't be doing anything else in this game today by the time we're done, because this is pretty much a precursor of quite simply the things to come in this game that we'll see over the next few segments. By the time we get through the rest of our what is it I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? As we continue our endeavours to finishing this game, I think this is the first of either 5 or 6 10 race championships we have to get through in this game. And it looks as though I have once again cleared the rest of the field with my superior pace. And since we are now on the revamped 2005 layout, it looks significantly different to the older course in most areas, and also a lot more sharpish as well, I might add. But either way, we are continuing to put together what feels like the drive of a lifetime. Definitely had some good racing up to this point, and also some hard racing as well, I might add. But either way, I now look to be very much clearing away from the pack behind me. So we are halfway through our second to last race of the All Japan GT Championship. And my god, as this race, as well as this championship, provided me with some pretty strong outer fares in terms of just how long some of these races have taken me to finish, and also knowing about just how many compelling battles there have been up to this point of the championship. I think it's fair to say that I've definitely had to stretch myself out at this point in terms of just knowing how long getting through all 10 of these races feels like it's going to be. Yeah, I have a strong feeling we're going to pass the 2-hour mark by the time we're done with this. I can definitely see that being the case. Because that's just... because that's just how long it's taken me to really start considering over whether it's really worth it for me to get through cleaning up these last 2 races today, especially because of, well, just how long I've already spent trying to get to this point of the championship in one segment. It's fair to say that it's definitely making me consider it. I've also passed 150 miles during this race. But either way, we still have one more lap to go, so let's just get through this, and then we will get through our final race at Suzuka of way we got through all these other races. Yeah, I was trying to have a sip of water from my bottle, but then I also stepped on the brakes early, because, well, I am not capable of multitasking unless it's staring at my TV and talking at the same time. But yeah, that was why I braked early, because, well, I just needed a sip of water to keep my voice input going. So we're closing in on the 2-hour mark, and we'll most likely pass it by the time we get to the end of this thing. But either way, it looks like we are very much on our way to culminating what will probably be me winning the last 2 races. Or, if I'm being realistic, the last 3 races. But there we go. Fuji Speedway, and 7 of the 9 races is how many I have won. 7 wins and 2 losses up to this point, plus a 6.5 second margin of victory over the Supra. And I think that now means the Hiroto GTR has now taken over 3rd spot from the Turismo GTR. I think it's fair to say this is pretty much how the points will finish now. Also nice to know that the Wood One Supra did manage to get a win as well at... Also nice to know that the Wood One Supra did manage to get a win at Motegi as well, which is good for him, I guess. Anyway, 1 race to go, and then we will be done with what has been the longest championship of this game so far, and it will certainly not be the last. Well, here we are again, back at Suzuka for our championship finale, and also very much what looks like will be 8 out of 10 wins for me if I can get to the front of the field. And I am certainly going to try and do that, because that is what my task is here from the start. As I'm already being blocked by the Supra early on, I just managed to clear him as we get through the S-bends, and now trying to clear the Zanavi Turismo GTR, another car that I managed to clear successfully. And now I have to figure out what to do about the Pennzoil Zaxel GTR, as I just avoid running off into the gravel on the exit of Dagna. And at this moment in time, I do manage to clear the second of the 3 GTRs in this race. And now the only one that remains is the Zanavi Hiroto GTR. Excuse me. Other than again, I did take a gulp of water before heading into this, so that's partly the reason for that. Okay, I probably didn't need to shift down as quickly as I did. And I'm being forced onto the gravel, but I do manage to at least keep away from trouble long enough to get a little bit of a side draft. I think someone hit me from behind, might have been the Supra, as he was repassing me for the lead, but either way, here we are, and we are very much locked in battle for what will be the last time we have to do this in this championship. Figured I'd give him the room on the outside. He probably had more room than I did. That was why I braked. And 3/10 is the gap. And I'm running wide. But I do manage to get it back again by rejoining the track on the edge of the hairpin. Getting a huge turbulence of speed as I close back in on the soup here at Suzuka. It looks as though this might be where I retake the lead as we head up the back stretch and into 130R. It looks as though I have pretty much got this one by the horns. And now it looks as though this will probably be where I will take over the lead for the rest of this race. It's looking like it will be 8 out of 10 wins to me, as I did have those 2 third-placed finishers at both Motegi and Hong Kong. Two tracks where I did figure the GT500 cars were going to have the advantage, but at this stage I think I'm managing to alleviate a lot of that pressure. But the pack is not letting me get away, as it looks as though the rest of the pack is closing in on me, but it could be a while before they realistically start to battle me. As we head through 200R and now into Spoon. A little bit wide there on the exit, but still able to maintain control with full force. And it looks as though the pack is somewhat closing in behind me. The gap is now 2 seconds to the soup. And it looks as though this lap is probably going to be over 2 minutes, as I set a 2:03.4. So 2 laps to go here at Suzuka. It's looking more and more like this is going to be where the pack starts to catch up with me slowly. But at this point, it seems as though I am going to finish this with 8 out of 10 wins. As I now have a 2-second lead up front. So it's fair to say the AI are keeping tabs on me at this point. They're not letting me get away with this one too much. Going a little bit wide there, but still able to at least keep my car on the track. So we now head through 200R, going through there in 6th gear, and this time it's now the Hiroto GTR that is in 2nd. But either way, I am building up my lead up front, as I just passed my previous best lap time. And continuing to pull away from the pack behind me. And as I look over at my monitor, we have now passed 2 hours of recording. And in all honesty, I'm actually feeling pretty worn out, because I have been at this now for at least 3 hours. And I think it's fair to say that I've been doing this without a break. So yeah, I think I might just call it a day as soon as I'm done with this, and then just get through the cleanup tomorrow when I have a bit more energy in me, because this has been a long championship, because I've been doing 10 races instead of 5. And the other thing that's to note is I'm probably going to have a shit ton of money by the time I'm done with this. So yeah, there is that. As I now have a 6-second gap up front. And that is the end of the All Japan GT Championship. 8 out of 10 wins for the RX-7. So glad that's over. And a 7.3 second gap in the end over the Hiroto GTR, who finished 2nd over the Supra. Then it was the Turismo GTR 4th, the Zaxel GTR finished in 5th, and at the back it was the Wood 1, Tom's Supra. So 88 points to me, 51 points to the Castrol Supra, 42 points to the Hiroto GTR, 35 points to the 35 points to the Zanavi Turismo GTR, and I'll go through the other 2 positions as soon as I've collected my money. So 15 grand for winning, and for winning the championship overall, 100 grand, and we have now got a shit ton of money. So it's fair to say we are absolutely out of the poverty sphere now. 24 points to the Pennzoil Zaxel GTR, and at the back it was the Toyota Wood One Tom's Supra. That was a pretty compelling championship altogether. A long one, but a compelling one. And I am glad to say that we did get not one, but two other winners by the end of this. Okay, let's go and get our prize car, and then after this, I can probably peace out. Because I've been at this now for about 4 hours or so. Anyway, so for winning the All Japan GT Championship, we get the Nissan Motul Pitwork Z from 2004. Nice. Okay. So there we go. The All Japan GT Championship is now done. And as for these two races at the Motegi Oval and Hong Kong, well, I think I'll leave those for tomorrow, because, well, I've been at this now for a while, and in all honesty, I'm pretty worn out. So I'm gonna get back to this tomorrow, and then I'll showcase my prize cars then, so yeah. The next day, after switching cars, I have now sweeped the two races I didn't win during the championship, and those were at both the Twin Ring Motegi Oval and in Hong Kong. So, now that that's all done, let's now go back to our garage and have a look at our stats. As I gained 1.9% altogether. That's probably how much the event was worth. But either way, I did win all the races, so that's all that matters. And as a result, I've now driven over 920 miles and won 170 races in 200 starts. And as for the RX-7 I drove, well, I drove this thing for 176.6 miles. So almost 177 miles is how much I drove in this thing for that whole championship, as I've now used 38 cars altogether. Now let's try and find the car we won. Here it is. The Nissan Motul Pitwork Z from 2004. God, I love this thing. Just with the way it looks and also just with the way it sounds. I think this thing is awesome. Bar none, is what me thinks. I would honestly say this is the perfect prize car to win from the, well, I guess you could say the Super GT Championship that we just did. Or JGTC Championship to be more specific. But anyway, that's what we get. And now, as a result, we have moved up 1.9% in progress, and that's now all of the events in Japan done. So, next time on Gran Turismo 4, starting the European events.